This is the Sports Plus two-way seat that I've just disassembled, and I'll just show you everything that I've learned. But I'll just give you a quick overview of the seat. Obviously it has the manual go forward and back, manual up and down lever here, and just a single electric adjustment of the backrest. You've got an airbag on the side, and the single motor that runs off is actually in the side behind the cushion here. For the seat heating, the seating in the bottom here, in this pad here, and in the lower portion here. Removal of the cushions. Bottom is a little bit difficult. The top is actually really, really hard, but fortunately, you don't actually have to, or there's very little to do with this actually removed. Now, I've removed on my standard sports seats the whole cover and everything because I had a rattle up in the top here, which is actually from the inside of the go forward lever mechanism, but the vast majority of stuff that you won't need to remove the backrest. You see this one's been trashed, and that's what I'll do with this, and that may be the reason why you are pulling it off. The seat covers, if you want to replace these, are frighteningly expensive. From the States, which is miles cheaper than here in Australia, it's $5,500 per seat for a full set. Just this piece here is $2,500. So that's probably not going to be an option. You're probably far better off to actually just go to a wrecker and get a new one, or get a second-hand one. So things that you can actually work on the underside of this is actually not that much because there are no motors or anything. But on a standard seat that has lots of electrics, then most of the motors and everything are underneath the seat. All you need to do is remove it from the car and turn it upside down and remove motors, etc. Or if you actually need to replace the seat heating on the bottom here, if that's broken, then you will need to remove the cushion and separate the cushion from the cover. I'll show you how to do that. The seat heating in here, this is the first bit that always comes out of the seat back. The seat heating is actually relatively simple to separate from the cover. I'll show you how to do that. For the seat heating here, and also for the motor and the airbag, once this is removed, and there's just a few clips along here, there's a whole bunch that run around the whole perimeter, but you can just remove a couple along here, remove or just pull that back, the cover, as well as the cushion, because the cushion is glued around the perimeter but not on the inside, so that can be opened up to give you access to the stuff that's inside those bolsters. If you need to remove the bottom rail section, clearly this is just the manual seat. You've got the lever there. The way it works is as you pull on that, it's actually going to lever these things up, which in turn pulls these pins out, which allows the thing to move. You've got a big spring here which helps move it forward, and you're pushing against that spring when you're pushing backwards. To remove this is actually pretty simple. There are 4 attachment points to there and to there. Don't disconnect any springs or anything like that before that. I mean, you can pull this spring off if you want, but actually it's pretty easy to do it afterwards. But all the other springs, etc., just leave them in place, because the whole thing just sort of falls apart once you remove these connection points. When you're doing this, like I've just got it sat on a box with something to protect the cushion there, otherwise this thing just sticks into the ground, which is a real pain. And it's one of the reasons why if I'm actually working with this thing upside down, sometimes it's easier just to get rid of this, because it's then going to stop this thing from sticking into the ground and getting in the way. To remove the screws here, the ones there and there are actually pretty simple. They're just T30s, and they actually screw into the frame behind. These ones here have, I'm not sure if you can see it there, but there's a T30 Torx on the inside, and on the outside is a M6 nut. Remove the M6 nut. It's really hard to get enough torque onto the Torx to actually have that removed, especially if it's a bit old like this one. The problem with that is you got the switch here, so you might need to get something in there to just release that. Just a couple of turns before the other one will actually come off, and once they come off, then the whole thing just falls out. So let's remove those. And when you remove one side, that whole thing, because they just slot into that on each side, so it's probably easiest just to remove, it doesn't matter which one you actually remove first, but they'll just pull apart, and then you can go to the other side. This nut in here is a bit of a pain because of the cover of the switch on the outside. I've just got a little ratchet 10mm socket, and that is the thing, it actually slides up on the underside here, and you can actually undo that and tighten it up like that. So the attachment points on both sides are that one there. That's the one that actually does the raising and lowering, and this one, it's actually very tight, but you can actually move these back and forth. So it pushes onto that one there, and it actually just screws through the one with the nut, and it actually sits on that portion there, on that front bit. If you need to remove the big spring here, I just use a hook tool like that. That's just going to lift that up, shove it on the ground, and put your foot over like this lug at the bottom here. I just shove my foot on that to hold it in place to actually install it as well. These springs here, initially to remove them, you're just going to get a hook tool again underneath there, and they'll just pull straight out. Just like that, and then to install them, just put them back in again. And when that is up like that, then this thing moves freely. And I'm not sure if you can see inside here, but there are 4 plunges, and can you see that spring is there? This thing here should actually be levering the spring down, so I'm actually going to have to remove that. It's actually pretty simple. You can see that these things just slot straight out, so you can actually just pull these things out like that, and then push them down to the correct position to actually get them aligned correctly again. And to release the other side here, all you need to do is just get that spring there, push that down, and that'll just release like that, and then the other side can just pull straight out. It's actually hooked in there, but that just pulls out. To remove the cover, which has the single switch in it as well as the handle off the side, the first thing we need to do is remove the handle, and that's just got a cover over the top of it. From the bottom, just get a tool like that, pop it off. There's a single screw on the inside that comes out of there, and then this will just wiggle out. From there, there are 3 screws that need to be removed. There's that one there, for that spot there, that one there, which goes into there, and this one here. These 2 are, I think they're Torx 25s. That one's just a normal Phillips head. Remove those, and then you've got these clips there and there, and they actually have sort of a guide pin for each of those holes, as well as the clips there. They need to be squeezed together. They're actually pretty tight. I found that I was actually better off getting a screwdriver underneath those and just sort of levering it up, and they eventually popped out. And as well as that, at the back here you've got a little knob here which will go into spot here. You'll just have to lift that out, as well as this clip there. That'll just get pulled straight out. And then eventually that will come free, and then you'll have that wiring harness which will be sitting in there. You'll just unclip that plug, and then they can come free. To remove the bottom cushion, the way this works is that it's clipped in. There are 4 clips on each side that are actually attached to a piece that runs down the length of the seat, and they clip into, there's 4 spots on each side, so 1, 2, 3, they're pretty obvious, and there's a 4th down under here and behind the harness there. And they're just a clip where you just squeeze them together, or get a screwdriver on either side and they just pull straight through. And then once they are pushed through, the whole cushion sort of gets loosened up a little bit, and you can push through here. You'll have to undo this clip there off the wire just there. Push everything through. At the back here, you'll have this piece here which fits underneath that slot in there, and that's actually pretty easy, just to get a screwdriver and lever that out. Make sure the harness, which has gone from the bottom, you actually just sort of feed that through, and that's for the heated seats. And then you need to have access to this rail all the way around the edge, because that's where this is going to be. So what you'll need to, because that'll be folded over like that and inside it, so you can actually squeeze things together, this cushion together, to give you a little bit more slack. And also, like elsewhere in the seat, along that rail in here, there are barbs in here that you need to sort of push sideways to be able to lever that out as you go around. And then once you actually pull it off, it's actually glued to the underside of the seat. I'll just turn it around to show you what that looks like. So you can see along there and along there. So as you pull it up from the back, you'll actually have to separate it along here. And then the last bit that comes out is going to be the bottom there. The cushion itself and how it's connected to the cover, you've got those clips there down each side, but then the bits go along here have got hog clips on them. So you can just start off at each one. They're pretty obvious down in here. I think there's 3 on each one. You can unclip those, move to the next one, and then move on if you do need to separate the two. Alright, so I just put the seat bottom in with the foam. I'm not going to pull it apart and show you again, but enough said that those 4 clips down each side, they're the things that you want to put in first. So have the foam's going to obviously be connected to the cover, have all of this folded up so you can actually get your hands in here, find those clips, have the thing upside down so you can actually just push each one of those in, and then once they are all in, then you can fold everything down. Then you can put some glue along the edges so it's glued in place, and then with the thing upside down and this sort of on a soft cushion, this will actually naturally compress, so it then makes it easy to push in the stuff from the front, work your way all the way around, and then finally put it in at the back. To remove the center part of the top cushion, the first thing we need to do is release this portion here. I've got it upside down. There's basically this rubber thing that gets folded inside there, which you basically need to lever out. Of note, there are 4 barbs in there that are actually going to lock this into place, which is the thing that makes it a little bit difficult to actually install. We need to pull it around and click it into place. Like that. And to remove, what you might need to do is, because there's those 4 barbs sort of there, there, there and there, so just gently put your screwdriver down and that'll actually release those out of there. Like that. Once you open that up, you'll have the connections for the seat heating. There is that single one there that goes to the center. The other 2 go to the outside portions of the seat. You don't need to disconnect that. It's just that single one there. Release that, and then you can go to the other side and release those other parts. So for that center portion removal, a couple of things to take notice of. The gap that it actually goes down into for these clips on the side here. You can see the polystyrene bit at the back. There's a bit of a cutout here, and there's a tiny little gap in here, which is where it actually goes. And that rivet there actually holds onto that lug, which that is going to come out of. So what we're trying to do is push that down to actually release it from behind the lug that's behind there. In addition to that, you've got that little cutout there, which has got a hook onto that spot at the bottom, which is the bit that comes out last when you're removing, and the bit that goes on first when you're installing. So when you're putting this in, and it's easiest to do it without the actual seat back on there, is to fold these in a little bit so you don't scratch your leather, and then just sort of leave it in there like that. And then we're going to push this up until it hooks over that lug there, and then we're going to go and install each of these. And with these, what you want to do is look down for that gap that I talked about, and then we're just going to push it down. It may not want to go around that lug, so you might need to get, I just use a little putty knife, and I'm just going to jam that down there until it eventually slides down there. Like that, and then it's locked behind it. To remove, and with the cushion on it, obviously there's not a whole bunch of room in here. What we actually want to do is sort of push things to the side so we can see in here, and you actually want to push down to get a little bit of slack behind that lug, and then we're going to push our putty knife down whilst we're pushing down, and then once we get it down like that, then we can gradually pull it out. And it takes a bit of effort, a bit of wiggling around. but eventually it comes free. So this is that center portion of the seat back. After it's all disassembled, you've got the cover on the outside, the cushion in the middle, which has the heating stuck to it, and then this plastic piece on the back. The way this is put together, there's ribs here which have hog ties on a piece of metal that runs through there that goes into those slots, and that hog ties onto 3 positions on each of those, and then this just hooks around. Hooks on these here, and there are plastic pieces along the side here that actually hook underneath these lugs. At the bottom here you've got that connection for the seat heating. At the bottom of the cushion itself is that piece that then folds out underneath it and actually gets pushed into the plastic at the back of the seat. Once you remove the center portion here of the seat, then this is what you're faced with. We need to release those bits at the back, and once we've done that, we've got all of these clips around the edge here. I've released most of them, but having toiled with this for a while, I finally found a way that actually releases them relatively easily. Basically, there's a plastic barbed shaped bit which is part of the seat cover that actually gets pushed into these clips all the way around here. There are, where is it? So I've released it there. But there are white ones, which are the short ones, and there are black ones. There's a black one here at the bottom and one there. And the black ones break off at the base really easily when you're manhandling them because of the leverage on those, because they're much longer than the white clips. So you might need to have a spare or 2 of those on hand. But this is the way that I've found that's best to release them. The ones at the bottom, I'll just push that in. But there's one there and there's one there. And with those bits released at the bottom from the back of the seat, they just pull out like that, which is really nice. Let me just push this one here. And I found that actually putting the seat out of the car on its back like this is definitely the easiest way to deal with it, because you can actually put a lot of leverage on the components, especially putting them back in, because you need to force them pretty hard. But this is my screwdriver, and I've tried lots of different tools, but this one is about 5mm at the tip, and at its widest bit there is a smidge under 7mm. And I found that that is a really nice size, because what we're trying to do is we're going to push it in here and rotate it, and we're going to initially get that first bit of the barb out, and then we're going to rotate it around so it actually goes down underneath it and actually opens up the clip and allows the whole thing to come out. So this is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to jam it in there like that. I'm going to rotate it until I can get that first bit of the barb clear. Hopefully you can see that. And now I'm just going to rotate it a little bit more, and eventually it just pops out. There we go. And it's the same for all of these here. To get access to different things, if you need to replace them, you've got the airbag on one side. On this case it's here on the left. And the screws, there are 2 screws for the airbag. There's one in there and one in there, which are behind the actual cushion. Now I've got the cushion out at the moment, but you would actually just pull this open and then just lift up the inside of the cushion to get access to it, because it's glued. The cushion is actually glued along the edges on the outside, but you would need to disconnect that clip there, that one, as well as that black one there. Let me just open up this one. Because the airbag connection points are there and there. So those 3 you wouldn't need to have to disconnect, but that one there you wouldn't need to. And I'm not sure which side it is, depending on which side the airbag is, whether or not it's reversed or whether or not you have the airbag and the motor for the backrest adjustment on the same side. But if you need to replace this motor, then you can actually leave that clip in place, albeit it's relatively simple to open that up, but you would need to pull it out of the bottom one there and then open that up, and then in here you've got the 2 screws. There's one there and there's one on the other side there, which is pretty easy to see. Disconnect the plug and then that motor will actually come out. Once you pull out the motor, there's a little sort of springy drive shaft that actually goes down into the motor mechanism down in here. So say just to check that, But that's actually a pretty simple process if you actually need to replace the motor. To release these bottom bits of the seat, once that center portion is removed, which has got a big rubber piece along there, that one will be stuck in there like that. You basically, I'm not sure if you can see there's a barb there and a barb there, and you're trying to move it about that far so that rubber piece is in between those two barbs, and that will then allow it to come out. So you don't want to push it too far that way, otherwise it'll actually go under that other barb there. If you need to remove the outer cover off the Sports Plus seat, the way it fits in, it's got this rubber bit which gets folded back like that and gets jammed all the way around the perimeter of the whole thing. It's actually pretty difficult to get out. At the bottom, at the start, it's got this little knob at the end here which is locked in underneath here, so you need to get a tool and sort of remove that. And then the book actually talks about just by hand pulling this out, but holy smoke, that was hard work. I ended up using, for most of it, just so I didn't damage the paintwork, because the problem is that this is all painted. It's actually very easy to scratch, and to try and get a tool in that would actually allow me to move that out was pretty hard. So I just put some material insulation tape around a big screwdriver, and that helped me out, but still I made a bit of a mess of it. Mind you, I would have been a little bit more careful if it was a seat that was out of my car that I drove every day. In addition to that, I'm not sure if you can see, but all the way around here there are these barbs that stick out. So as you are going around, you kind of need to look for those and get a screwdriver and push those in and get the actual piece of rubber clear of that to go all the way around. So that actually took a lot of effort to get that off. There aren't too many circumstances where you would actually have to remove the cover itself, because the airbag and the motors and everything in the back can mainly be accessed without removing it. But if you need to, it's not for the faint-hearted. When you're removing the go-forward levers on the side of these seats, one of the problems you have is this is painted and you don't want to scratch it. So the method that I used on the other type of seat, where I actually just got a screwdriver underneath here and then pushed it to one side, pushed in there, moved it the other way, pushed in there, and that would actually then allow that to be out to about there somewhere. And then you would actually get a tool inside here, and what you're trying to do is pull that down, which actually clears it of the lever inside, and then that whole thing comes out. With the painted here, you've just got to be a little bit careful. So I used a putty knife, a plastic putty knife, and I taped all the way around here. So I didn't scratch it, or tried to minimize the scratching. It looks a bit rough because I was just mucking around on this seat that's just been trashed. But if it was in the car and it was a good seat, make sure you tape it all the way around here, because this is really tight. When you jam this in there and you're going to shuffle that around, you don't actually want to damage the paintwork. So to remove the seat back, you'll need to remove the 6 screws around the perimeter. You've got these clips down the bottom here. You just need to squeeze those together and push that out the back. And then finally there are 2 clips in here which you can't really see, but if you get a screwdriver and you put it in about there and then rotate it out, you'll actually see a clip just in there. And then you do the same on the other side, and that just clears it out. There are some little bumps and everything that you'll need to move it around, as well as finally you've got the levers for the go forward lever. You'll have to generally move it to one side and then do one and then move it out. And there are those 2 clips there which you can't see, but as soon as you actually just lever in there, it actually moves it clear of it pretty easily.